Are these all Michael's cars?
These are some of them.
Some of them?
Some of them.
More cars.
More cars.
There's another Rolls Royce.
Yeah, well, there's a few.
They weren't supposed to open those doors, but when they did, what they found inside shocked even the people who knew him best. For years after Michael Jackson's death, parts of Neverland Ranch were quietly cleared out, but one private collection remained sealed and hidden from the public. When access was finally granted, the discoveries ranged from extraordinary to deeply personal to things some witnesses say should never have been kept at all. So what was really hidden inside Neverland all those years? And why did those who saw it hesitate to speak about it? Join us as we uncover the mysterious private collection of Michael Jackson that left insiders disturbed, the ranch that the world forgot. Michael Jackson bought Neverland Ranch in 1988 for somewhere between $19 and $30 million. He renamed it after the island in the Peter Pan story, the place where children never age, and over the following 17 years, he turned 2,700 acres of Santa Barbara County land into something that has no real equivalent in the private residential history of the United States. He turned it into a full amusement park, with a zoo that housed giraffes, elephants, and Bengal tigers. There was also a private railway with its own station, a 12,000-square-foot mansion, a movie theater, a recording studio, a lake with a waterfall, and a Ferris wheel custom-built for him in 1990 by the Eli Bridge Company for $215,000. He built a world unlike anything the people around him had ever seen. And then he lived inside it. Then, in 2005, he left. He had just been acquitted of child sexual misconduct charges after a 5-month trial that had been the most publicized legal proceeding of its era. He walked out of the courthouse and told the reporters that Neverland had been violated and that he could never return to it. He flew to Bahrain and never went back. The property sat empty and began to deteriorate almost immediately. The animals were relocated. The rides were eventually sold off. But his possessions, his furniture, his collections, his vehicles, everything he had accumulated across the 17 years he lived there remained inside. The estate went into foreclosure. Colony Capital stepped in and purchased the debt to prevent the sale. Jackson remained the nominal owner, but had no financial control over the property. When he died in June 2009 at the age of 50,
Michael Jackson, 50 years old, the king of pop, has died. A very, very sad moment.
Neverland was already a ghost version of what it had been, and the question of what to do with everything inside it became one of the most complicated estate management problems in entertainment history. A group of photographers and urban explorers entered the property between December 2007 and March 2008, before Jackson's death, while it was sitting empty and largely unguarded. They made multiple trips and through every building they could access, taking photographs of everything. And when they eventually gave an interview to Vice about what they had seen, the word they kept returning to was weird. Not in the dismissive sense, in the sense of someone trying to find language for something they genuinely did not have a framework for. "Everything was pretty weird," one of them said. "We haven't really told anyone about it." The place did something to the people who went inside it that was hard to articulate afterward. The ranch had been empty for years before anyone documented what was inside, and these explorers found things they struggled to describe. So what exactly did people see when they started cataloging the contents of a 2,700-acre estate that the most famous entertainer of the 20th century had built and then abandoned? The garage. When Julian's Auctions began cataloging Michael Jackson's vehicles in the lead-up to the 2009 estate sale, the list they produced reads less like a car collection and more like a document of a very specific kind of mind. He did not collect cars the way most wealthy people collect cars. He did not pursue rarity for its own sake, or prestige for its own sake, or investment value for its own sake. He collected vehicles the way he collected everything else, for the story they carried and for what they could be turned into if you gave them the right interior. He owned 6 Rolls-Royces. One of them, a 1999 Silver Seraph, had an interior that journalists at Jalopnik described as looking like it had been pulled directly from the Palace of Versailles. Dark blue exterior. Inside, gold, ornate paneling, fabric that belonged in a European royal residence rather than an automobile. He owned a 1990 Silver Spur, 2 trimmed in contrasting white leather and black fabric, with a full-service bar installed where other people kept their cup holders. His possessions from Neverland, including 6 Rolls-Royces, a Bentley Arnage, and 2 Mercedes-Benz vehicles, ended up filling 6 warehouses across Los Angeles, after the auction he sued to stop was canceled in April 2009. However, the vehicle that tells everyone the most about who Michael Jackson actually was is a fire truck. In 1999, he paid $360,000 at a charity auction for a custom-built fire truck painted bright red with gold trim and his MJ signature logo on the side. It was powered by a Detroit Diesel Series 60 engine producing 400 horsepower. He used it to cruise around the 3,000 acres of Neverland Ranch while hosting parties for sick children and their families. Then there is the 1993 Ford Econoline van. From the outside, it is nothing. It is a plain commercial van of the kind anyone would drive past 1,000 times without looking twice. Inside, it is one of the strangest personal spaces ever documented in automotive history. Velvet, individual television screens, a vintage video game console, plush leather upholstery, and a full media setup that he apparently used when he needed to be somewhere that was not a stage and not a mansion, but was still completely, deliberately removed from ordinary reality. He stopped driving himself in the 1990s and kept this van on the property, fully operational as a kind of private media room on wheels. It is unknown whether it ever left the ranch. Given everything else about how he lived, it may well have never needed to. The 1954 Cadillac Fleetwood deserves its own paragraph. This specific vehicle was the car that chauffeured Jessica Tandy in the 1989 film Driving Miss Daisy, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Michael Jackson owned a Hollywood icon. He kept it among his Rolls-Royces and his fire truck and his media van in a garage that nobody outside a small circle of people ever fully saw. But the cars were only the most visible layer of what Neverland contained. When the explorers and the estate catalogers started moving through the rest of the property, they found things that the vehicles had not prepared them for. And the detail that everyone who has heard it cannot quite shake involves a small figure on a moon, repeated everywhere, on every surface, until it stopped being decoration and started being something else. The moon logo that was everywhere. The urban explorers who entered the property between 2007 and 2008 kept returning to it in their accounts. A small figure of a boy in pajamas, sitting on a crescent moon. The same image the world associates with the DreamWorks logo, though the specific version at Neverland predated DreamWorks' use of the image. It was on the signs, the bumper cars, the coach station where the coaches parked. It was on the ground. It was everywhere, one of the explorers said. It just seemed really exotic and different. But underneath the exotic quality, there was something else. The repetition of a single image of a small child across an entire private estate had a cumulative effect on the people who walked through it that they found difficult to explain without reaching for the word creepy. The other thing was that he collected memorabilia that had his likeness on it, the explorer told Vice. He had Pepsi bottles and books, and other promotional material in boxes. He also had stacks and stacks of fan mail. Stacks and stacks of letters from people who loved him, accumulated across decades, kept in boxes in a ranch he had abandoned, unread or at least unreachable to the people who sent them. Each of those letters represented a human being who felt strongly enough about Michael Jackson to put it in writing and mail it to a ranch in Santa Barbara County. Collectively, they represented a level of devotion that most public figures never generate, and that Michael Jackson attracted throughout his entire public life, from the Jackson 5 years onward. And there they were, in boxes, in an empty building, on a property that the man who received them had said was violated and had never returned to. The urban explorers documented what they found in detail across multiple visits between December 2007 and March 2008, and their account remains one of the few detailed first-person descriptions of what the interior of Neverland actually looked like after Jackson left it. The single detail from those explorer accounts that has lodged most permanently in the minds of people who have read them is the photograph on a tabletop. Tom Sneddon, the prosecuting attorney in Michael Jackson's 2005 child sexual misconduct trial, had tried for years to put Jackson in prison. He had pursued the case with an intensity that Jackson supporters called a vendetta, and that others described as appropriate prosecutorial zeal. The jury acquitted Jackson on all 14 counts after 3 months of deliberation. And somewhere in the abandoned mansion at Neverland, on a surface next to what the explorer thought might have been a Pac-Man table, there was a photograph of Tom Sneddon with devil's horns drawn on his face, in a room that nobody had entered in 2 years, as if whoever left it there had put it down in the middle of something and simply never come back to pick it up. That image of a defaced photograph of a prosecutor in an abandoned mansion surrounded by 100 moon logos and stacks of fan mail is the image that captures what Neverland actually was more precisely than any official description of the property ever could. But the story of what happened to everything after his death adds its own layer of strangeness to all of it. The things that ended up at county fairs. When Michael Jackson died on June 25, 2009, he left behind debts that were estimated at $400 million at the high end of various accounts. Neverland Ranch, which he had bought in cash for somewhere between $19 and $30 million in 1988, had been repeatedly borrowed over the years. Fortress Investment Group held the second mortgages and had been pursuing foreclosure before Colony Capital stepped in to prevent it in 2008. The question of what to do with the physical contents of Neverland, the vehicles, the furniture, the costumes, the personal effects, the amusement park equipment became one of the most complicated and most publicized estate management decisions in entertainment history. Julian's Auctions was contracted to handle an estate sale. The catalog they produced for the planned April 2009 auction was itself a document of extraordinary interest. Over 2,000 items from the Neverland Ranch property, including the vehicles, going under the hammer in Beverly Hills. Then Michael Jackson's lawyers filed to stop it. He sued to prevent the auction from proceeding, arguing that the items were being sold without his consent, in violation of his contractual rights. The auction was canceled in mid-April 2009, approximately 10 weeks before his death. His possessions were moved into storage. 6 warehouses across Los Angeles filled up with the contents of a 3,000-acre ranch. After his death in June 2009, Julian's Auctions eventually proceeded with sales at various points over the following years, dispersing pieces of the collection to buyers across the world. Some items sold for multiples of their estimated value. His signed moonwalk fedora, his crystal-encrusted white glove, his stage costumes, and the cars, eventually, to anonymous buyers whose identities remain private. The amusement park equipment was handled separately. Butler Amusements of Fairfield, California, purchased 6 of the rides. Those rides have since appeared at county fairs and state fairs across California, Oregon, and Washington, sometimes with signs noting their Neverland origin. The Dragon Wagon children's roller coaster ended up at Coney Island in New York City. The Sea Dragon swinging ship ride was purchased in 2008 by Beach Bend Park in Bowling Green, Kentucky. The bumper cars were permanently installed at Cal Expo, the site of the California State Fair. The 65-foot Ferris wheel that Jackson had custom-built in 1990 for $215,000 was purchased by Archway Amusements Corp. Of Imperial, Missouri. The private amusement park of the most famous entertainer in the world is now spread across a dozen public venues in 3 states, and most of the children riding those attractions have no idea where they came from. They are riding Michael Jackson's rides at the Iowa State Fair and calling them normal. His rides are at county fairs. His warehouses held the contents of a world he built and then abandoned. And the property itself changed hands one more time, in a transaction that brought the whole story around to a number that makes everything that came before it land with a different kind of weight. $22 million, and what Neverland became without him. $22 million, and what Neverland became without him. In 2015, Colony North Star put Neverland Ranch up for sale with an asking price of $100 million. The price included the 12,000-square-foot main mansion, the 4-acre lake with a waterfall, 3 guest houses, a tennis court, and the 5,500-square-foot movie theater. Michael Jackson's brother Jermaine wrote an open letter to Colony North Star expressing his opposition to the decision to sell. The property sat on the market. The $100 million asking price found no buyers. By 2019, the price had been reduced to $67 million. It still found no buyers. In 2020, American billionaire Ronald Burkle, a friend of the Jackson family, purchased the property for $22 million. $22 million for a property that Jackson had bought for somewhere between $19 and $30 million in 1988. A property where he had spent hundreds of millions of dollars on construction, improvements, animals, rides, and infrastructure across 17 years of occupation. A property that had once been described as the most extraordinary private residence in the United States. It sold for approximately what it cost to buy 32 years earlier, before the improvements, before the zoo, before the Ferris wheel and the railway, and the recording studio and the amusement park. The market had decided, without sentiment, what the legacy of Neverland was worth in dollars. The number it settled on was the same number where the story started. The property is now officially known as Sycamore Valley Ranch, which is what it was called before Jackson renamed it. The new owner has made the extensive renovations required to make a property habitable again after 15 years of declining maintenance. The gates that Jackson installed, the famous wrought iron entrance that became one of the most photographed pieces of private infrastructure in California, were removed and are warehoused in a secret location in Los Angeles. What remains is the music, which is not nothing. Thriller is still the best-selling album in the history of recorded music. It was on the charts for 80 weeks when it was released in 1982 and held the #1 position for 37 of them. Billie Jean, Beat It, Smooth Criminal, Human Nature, and Don't Stop Till You Get Enough are still playing somewhere right now. The career that the ranch was built to escape from outlasted every physical thing associated with it. So what exactly does this discovery reveal about the King of Pop, the garage's long-kept secret? There is a reading of Michael Jackson's car collection and his private possessions that treats them as evidence of eccentricity, of a man so far removed from ordinary life that he had lost contact with normal human experience and replaced it with an increasingly elaborate private fantasy. But there is another reading, and it is accurate. Michael Jackson started performing professionally at the age of 5. He had his first #1 hit with the Jackson 5 when he was 11 years old. He was famous before he had developed any framework for understanding what fame meant or what it would cost him. His entire childhood happened on stage, in recording studios, and in the back seats of cars traveling between cities. He never had a normal Saturday. He never had a period of obscurity in which to figure out who he was when nobody was watching. By the time he was old enough to choose what his private world looked like, the concept of normal private experience had been absent from his life for so long that he had no template for it. He built Neverland because he was trying to give himself the childhood that the career had consumed before he could live it. The rides, the zoo, and the train station were not the signs of a disconnected mind. They were the signs of someone trying to construct something they had missed at the age when it should have arrived naturally. Michael Jackson's garage did not contain the secret of who he was. It contained everything he was, all at once, without any of it being resolved into a clean explanation. That is what makes it so hard to stop thinking about. Which detail from Michael Jackson's private world surprised you the most? And do you think the real story of who he was will ever be fully understood? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.